Sofia Herrera stood silently outside the ultrasound room, the medical report trembling between her cold fingers. 6 weeks pregnant. She had thought today would become the most beautiful day of her 3-year marriage. She had thought Alejandro Rivas, her chief executive officer husband, would finally smile when he heard he was going to be a father. But when the elevator doors opened, Sofia saw him. Alejandro was helping another woman out of the maternity ward. It was Camila Duarte, the woman her mother-in-law always praised as elegant, refined, and born to stand beside a powerful man. Camila held Alejandro's arm with one hand, while the other rested gently on her stomach. Alejandro bent down to adjust her coat with a tenderness Sofia had not felt from him in months. Before Sofia could take a step forward, Camila laughed softly. "How much longer are you going to let that country girl carry the Rivas name?" Alejandro stayed silent for a few seconds. Then he answered, his voice calm enough to break her heart. "After my mother's birthday party tonight, I'll make her sign the divorce papers." The report in Sofia's hand crumpled. She looked down at the words that said she was carrying his child. Then she looked back at the man who had once promised to protect her for life, now shielding another woman. That night, inside the glittering hall of the Rivas
You think
mansion,
you belong here,
hundreds
eh?
of guests laughed as her
And where
mother-in-law
exactly-
pointed at Sofia's old dress and said, "Even the Rivas
dress,
name can't
madam.
hide where you came from."
Do you
No one in that room knew the woman they were mocking was the one who had secretly saved the Rivas Corporation from bankruptcy. And no one imagined that after that night, Sofia Rivas would disappear forever. When she returned, the Rivas family would finally learn what it meant to beg. The Rivas mansion glowed like a palace from the outside. Inside, everything felt colder. Sofia stepped into the hall alone. Alejandro had not come home to take her to his mother's birthday party. He had sent a driver who did not know her name. She wore a simple cream dress, clean and pressed. But the moment she entered, several women looked at it as if it were a stain. Sofia kept one hand on her handbag. The medical report was inside. 6 weeks. A secret no one had earned the right to hear yet. Alejandro stood near the center of the room, surrounded by investors and old family friends.
We must appear
Camila stood beside
unified.
him in an emerald satin gown, polished
Yes,
and completely
I
at
know.
home. When Alejandro saw Sofia, his eyes moved first to her dress. "You should have worn something more formal," he said. Sofia swallowed the ache in her throat. "I needed to talk to you." "Not here," he said. "Do not make this difficult." Before she could answer, Isabel Rivas approached with a bright smile and cruel eyes. "There she is," Isabel said. "For a moment I thought our little country bride had lost her way." A few guests laughed. Camila lowered her voice, pretending kindness.
I know what you're going
"Mrs.
through is
Rivas,
hard, but you
maybe
have to be
Sofia did
strong.
not know how formal tonight
Don't
would be."
worry about me.
The insult was soft. That made it sharper. Sofia looked at Camila's hand near her stomach. The hospital came back to her in one flash. Then Isabel looked at Sofia's dress and sighed. "Even the Rivas name cannot hide where you came from." More laughter spread through the room. Alejandro did not stop it. That silence hurt more than the words. A man near the champagne table raised his glass. "To Alejandro," he said. "The man who saved Rivas Corporation when everyone thought it was finished." The room applauded. Alejandro smiled. Sofia remembered a different room, a small apartment, unpaid bills on the table. Alejandro sitting in the dark, too proud to admit he was afraid. He had not saved the company alone. 2 years earlier, when every bank refused him, Sofia had called the trustee of the Santa Lucia Agricultural Trust. She had arranged an emergency bridge loan with no voting demand, no public announcement, and no name attached. She had given Alejandro a second chance. A guest said, "I still wonder who backed that loan. Whoever it was must have loved this company." Sofia spoke before fear could stop her. "I did." The applause died. Camila turned slowly. "I am sorry," she said. "What did you say?" Sofia lifted her chin. "I helped save Rivas Corporation." For 1 second, no
That's
one moved.
simply impossible.
Then Isabel laughed. "Oh, Sofia, please do not embarrass yourself on my birthday." Camila smiled with perfect pity. "With what money, Sofia? A basket of apples from your village?" The guests laughed again. Sofia looked at Alejandro. He was not laughing, but he was not defending her either. His face was tight with anger. "Sofia," he said. "Enough. It was the Santa Lucia Trust," she said. "The emergency bridge loan. No voting control. No public pressure. You know those terms were unusual." Alejandro stepped closer. You are making a scene. I am telling the truth. You are humiliating yourself. Those words emptied the room around her. For a moment, Sophia almost told him everything. The hospital, the report, the child. Then she saw Camila watching them, waiting. Alejandro took Sophia by the arm and guided her toward the side hallway. Sophia pulled free. Do not touch me like that again. Alejandro glanced back toward the guests. What is wrong with you tonight?
You knew all along, didn't you?
I saw you at the hospital, Sophia said. His face changed. I saw you with Camila. I heard what she asked you, and I heard your answer. Alejandro looked away. That was enough. How long? She asked. It is complicated. No, Sophia said. Bankruptcy was complicated. Betrayal is simple. His eyes hardened. You do not understand my world. Sophia almost smiled. I understood it well enough to save it. Alejandro reached into his jacket and pulled out a white envelope. Divorce papers. My lawyers prepared this, he said. It can be quiet. You will be compensated. You can go back to wherever you feel comfortable. Sophia looked at the papers. Then she placed one hand over her stomach. He did not notice. Is Camila pregnant? She asked. Alejandro was silent. Is the child yours? I intend to take responsibility, he said. Something inside Sophia went still. She took the envelope from him. For 1 second, relief crossed his face. Then she folded it once and held it at her side. You will have your signature, she said. But not tonight, Sophia. Not while your mother's guests are still laughing at me. Not while Camila stands in that room pretending she won. And not while you still think I am the one who should be ashamed. She turned to leave. Camila was standing at the end of the hallway. Several guests had followed behind her. Isabel was there too. Camila took a careful step forward. Sophia, please, she said loudly. Do not be angry. You cannot keep Alejandro by making threats. Sophia understood too late. Do not come closer. Camila came closer anyway. She reached for Sophia's wrist. Sophia pulled back. It was barely a movement. But Camila gasped, clutched her stomach, and fell to the marble floor. The music stopped.
What is it?
My baby, Camila cried. Isabel screamed for a doctor.
Someone call an
Guests
ambulance.
rushed forward. Alejandro dropped beside
I'm
Camila.
here.
Sophia stood frozen, the divorce papers still in her hand. I did not touch her. No one listened. Camila pointed at
told me you
Sophia.
loved me.
She pushed me. Sophia looked
This
at
is a
Alejandro.
misunderstanding.
This was his last chance to see the
Who is
truth.
telling the truth?
Alejandro, she said. You saw where I was standing. He looked at Camila, then at the guests, then at his mother. And Sophia watched him choose. Call security, Alejandro said. The words moved through her like ice. The medical report was still inside her handbag. The child was still inside her, and the truth was still inside her. For the first time that night, Sophia understood that if she stayed in this house, they would bury all three. The first time Sophia saw Alejandro afraid, he was not wearing a tailored suit. He was sitting on the floor of their small apartment, still in yesterday's shirt, surrounded by unpaid invoices and unopened letters from the bank. The lights were off because he said the brightness hurt his eyes. But Sophia knew the truth. He did not want to see the numbers anymore. Rivas Corporation was 3 weeks away from collapse. A shipment of refrigerated produce had been rejected at the port after a sudden change in import certification. 2 supermarket chains had canceled their contracts. A foreign investor had withdrawn. Then the bank had triggered a debt covenant that demanded immediate repayment if the company's cash reserve dropped below a certain level. Alejandro had explained it once, angrily, as if speaking to himself. If they call the debt now, we lose everything. The warehouses, the trucks, the export licenses, my father's name. Sophia had sat across from him at the kitchen table and listened. She did not interrupt. Alejandro hated being pitied. He hated needing help even more. Back then, he still believed pride was the same thing as strength. So Sophia did what she had learned to do in the Herrera house. She read quietly. At midnight, after Alejandro fell asleep on the couch, she gathered the papers he had thrown aside: credit letters, purchase orders, refrigerated transport agreements, insurance notices. She read the debt covenant twice. Then she read it a third time. The problem was not only money, it was time. If Rivas Corporation could show a guaranteed cash bridge before the bank's deadline, the covenant would not trigger. If the company could prove its next 3 shipments were insured, certified, and backed by a credible buyer, the bank would have to wait. Alejandro thought he needed a miracle. Sophia knew he needed a bridge. That was why, at 2:17 in the morning, she walked into the bathroom, turned on the fan so he would not hear her voice, and called Monterey. The trustee answered on the 5th ring. "Miss Herrera?" he said, still half asleep. Sophia closed her eyes. No one in the Rivas world knew that name. Not the full weight of it. Sofia Herrera was the only daughter of Don Esteban Herrera, chairman of Herrera Group. The Herrera family owned packing plants, cold storage centers, private export routes, and agricultural investment trusts across Mexico and the southern United States. But Sofia had left that world. She had left after her mother died and her father tried to fold her grief into a boardroom plan. He wanted her to marry the son of a political ally. Sofia wanted to choose one thing in her life that did not come with a contract. She chose Alejandro. Not because he was powerful, because, at the time, he was not. He was ambitious, wounded, brilliant, and stubborn. He talked about rebuilding his father's company as if it were a house he could carry on his back. Sofia had loved the man who was not ashamed to dream in front of her, so she hid her surname's power. She told him she came from a rural family with old land and old problems. That was not entirely false. Herrera wealth had grown from land, but it was not the kind of land Isabel Rivas imagined when she used the word country as an insult. That night, Sofia asked the trustee to open the Santa Lucia Agricultural Trust. The trust had been created by her mother before she died. It was supposed to fund small farms run by women. Sofia had never touched it for herself, but its charter allowed emergency investments in agricultural logistics if the beneficiary protected jobs and did not demand voting control. Rivas Corporation qualified. Morning, the documents were ready. The bridge loan moved through an escrow account. The funds did not arrive in Sofia's name. They arrived under the trust's name, with a clause that refused voting rights and required only operational transparency. No board seat, no takeover, no public announcement. Sofia signed away the one thing most investors would have demanded: control. When Alejandro received the call, he cried, "Not in front of the bank. Not in front of his lawyers. Only in the kitchen, with his face in his hands, while Sofia stood behind him and touched his shoulder. They approved it," he whispered. "I do not know who did this." Sofia had kissed the top of his head. "Then survive first," she said. "Ask questions later." He never asked. At first, she told herself it was better that way. If Alejandro knew the money had come from her, would he still believe he had rebuilt the company himself? Or would he see the Herrera name standing behind her like a wall? Sofia wanted love without debt, so she kept the secret. But secrets do not stay soft forever. Sometimes they become cages. 2 years after the rescue, Rivas Corporation looked stronger than ever. Its trucks were painted again. Its warehouses were full. Its executives spoke about expansion, acquisitions, and luxury partnerships. Alejandro appeared on business panels and said discipline had saved the company. Sofia watched from the back of the room. She never corrected him. But another problem was growing inside Rivas Corporation, hidden under polished reports. The company was preparing a deal with a foreign private equity fund called Valleport Capital. On paper, it looked like a growth investment. The fund would inject money, restructure debt, and open access to European buyers. But Sofia had seen the early summary on Alejandro's desk. One sentence had made her stop: a conversion trigger tied to missed delivery benchmarks. If Rivas missed 2 quarterly shipment targets, Valleport could convert its preferred shares into controlling equity. It was not called a takeover in the summary. It was called downside protection. Sofia knew that language. Her father's lawyers used it when they wanted to take control without looking aggressive. She had tried to warn Alejandro once. He had closed the folder before she finished reading. "This is not dinner conversation," he said. "I am not talking about dinner. I am talking about your company." "My company," he repeated. The words were quiet, but they drew a line between them. After that, Alejandro changed the passwords to several shared files. He began taking calls in the study. He told Sofia the business was too complex for casual opinions. He did not know she had grown up hearing shareholder traps discussed over breakfast. He did not know she could read a beneficial ownership chart faster than his analysts. And he did not know the Santa Lucia Trust still held a protective clause. If Rivas entered a deal that threatened the jobs attached to the original rescue loan, the trust had the right to demand disclosure of all hidden owners behind the new investor. That clause was sleeping inside the old file. Camila and Raul Mendoza did not know it existed. Raul was Rivas Corporation's former chief financial officer. He had left after the crisis, claiming exhaustion. But Sofia had noticed his name in the metadata of the Valiport summary, not on the visible page. In the document history, that meant Raul had touched the deal before Alejandro saw it. And if Raul was near the deal, it was not clean. By the time Sofia stood in the Rivas hallway with Camila on the marble floor, the truth was larger than a marriage. Camila was not only trying to replace a wife, someone was trying to take Rivas Corporation. And the only person in that house who knew where to look had just been accused of hurting an unborn child. The security guards did not touch Sofia at first. They only formed a wall around her. That was worse. It meant the hallway had already decided she was dangerous. Camila lay on the marble floor, one hand pressed to her stomach, the other gripping Alejandro's sleeve. Her breathing came in sharp little cries. But Sofia noticed something no one else saw. Camila's eyes were dry. She was not looking at her own body. She was watching the guests, watching which face believed her first. Isabel knelt beside her, trembling with fury. "Do not let that woman leave," she said. Sofia looked at Alejandro. "Tell them what you saw." Alejandro did not answer. A doctor who had been attending the party pushed through the crowd. He checked Camila's pulse, asked how many weeks she was, and told someone to call an ambulance. Camila whispered that she felt pain. Isabel repeated the words louder, as if volume could turn them into evidence. Sofia tried again. "I did not push her." Camila turned her face toward Alejandro's chest. "She grabbed me," she sobbed. "She said I would not take her place." The lie was so complete that Sofia almost could not breathe. Alejandro looked up at her. His expression was not grief. It was accusation. "Sofia," he said, "why would you do this?" The question broke something cleaner than anger. She opened her handbag with shaking fingers and pulled out the medical report. "Because I am pregnant too," she said. For 1 second, the hallway became silent. Then Isabel stood. "No," she said flatly. "Do not try that now." Sofia held out the paper. 6 weeks. I found out today." Alejandro stared at the report but did not take it. Camila made a small sound from the floor. Soft, frightened, perfectly timed. "Alejandro," she whispered, "please." He turned back to her. And Sofia understood that truth could stand in her hand, printed in black ink, and still lose to the woman everyone wanted to believe. The ambulance arrived through the front entrance. Camila was lifted onto a stretcher. Isabel walked beside her, crying loudly enough for every guest to hear. Alejandro followed. No one asked whether Sofia needed a doctor. She stood alone in the hallway, still holding the report, while guests looked at her as if she had brought violence into a respectable house. Then a cramp moved through her lower abdomen. Small at first, then sharper. Sofia placed one hand against the wall. The hallway blurred. A young server named Elena saw her from near the service door. Elena was the daughter of one of the kitchen workers. 2 months earlier, Sofia had quietly paid for Elena's mother's medicine when Isabel refused to advance her wages. Elena did not ask permission. She ran to Sofia. "Mrs. Rivas?" Sofia tried to answer, but the pain cut through her again. Elena looked down. A thin line of blood had touched Sofia's ankle. The girl went pale. She grabbed Sofia's arm and shouted toward the kitchen. "Call emergency services. Now." A guard stepped in front of her. "Mrs. Rivas said no one leaves until she speaks to security." Elena pushed past him. "She is bleeding." That word finally moved the room. Not with compassion, with panic, because blood was harder to explain than laughter. Sofia's legs weakened. Elena lowered her to a bench near the service corridor. Someone brought water. Someone else whispered that this could not happen in front of the guests. Sofia heard the words as if from underwater. A man from the house staff called emergency services at 10:43 in the evening. The call would later become important. At that moment, it was only a voice on a phone, giving the address while Sofia pressed both hands to her stomach. Her own ambulance arrived 12 minutes after Camila's. By then, Alejandro was gone. At the hospital, Sofia was not taken to the same private maternity wing as Camila. She entered through emergency intake. A nurse wrapped a white bracelet around her wrist and scanned it at 11:02 in the evening. The machine beeped. Her name appeared on the screen as Sofia Rivas. Not Herrera, not daughter, not heir, only wife. The triage nurse asked how far along she was. 6 weeks, Sofia whispered. Pain level? Sofia tried to count it. Then her blood pressure dropped, and the room moved away from her. When she opened her eyes again, the doctor's gentle tone told her before his words did. "I am very sorry," the doctor said. Sophia stared at the ceiling. The fluorescent light above her flickered once. The doctor kept speaking. Early pregnancy, trauma and stress, heavy bleeding. Nothing more could be done. They would monitor her through the night. Sophia did not cry at first. Her body had gone quiet. Too quiet. A nurse placed the folded medical report on the bedside table. The corner was wrinkled from Sophia's hand. Beside it lay the hospital bracelet, printed with the intake time. 11:02. That number fixed itself inside Sophia's mind. Later, people would argue about what happened. They would say Camila fell first. They would say Sophia caused a scene. They would say emotions ran high. But the body has its own record. So does a hospital. So does time. Near midnight, Alejandro entered the room. His tie was loose. His face looked exhausted, but not shattered. That told Sophia enough. Camila was safe. He stopped near the bed. "Sophia." She did not look at him. When she gave him nothing, he said, "The doctor says Camila is stable." Sophia turned her head slowly. Of all the things he could have said first, he chose that. Alejandro looked at the table and saw the bracelet. Then the report. Then the empty place, where a future had been. His face changed. "What happened?" he asked. Sophia gave a small, dry laugh. It did not sound like her. "You left," she said. His mouth opened, then closed. "I did not know." "No, you chose not to know." He stepped closer. "I was told you were being examined." "By whom?" He did not answer. The silence carried Camila's name. Sophia looked back at the ceiling. "I was pregnant when you handed me divorce papers." Alejandro gripped the rail of the bed. "Sophia, do not," she said. The word was quiet, but it stopped him. "You thought I pushed her. You thought I lied. You thought I invented my own child to win an argument in a hallway." His face tightened with pain. But pain was not enough anymore. A nurse entered with a clipboard, placed a discharge information packet beside the bed, and left. Sophia reached for the medical report, folded it carefully, and put it back into her handbag. Alejandro watched the movement. "What are you doing?" "Keeping what is mine." "Sophia, we need to talk." "No," she said. "You needed to talk before you chose her version of the truth." At that moment, Elena appeared at the doorway. Her eyes were red. She held a small plastic evidence bag from the hospital desk. Inside was a white cloth with a faint brown stain. "I am sorry," Elena whispered. "I kept this from the hallway, and I told the nurse I was the one who called emergency services." Alejandro looked confused. Sophia looked at the cloth. It was the napkin Elena had pressed against her ankle before the ambulance came. Blood, time, witness. 3 small things no one in the mansion had bothered to protect. Elena hesitated, then added, "Mrs. Sophia, the camera by the service stairs was off tonight. My cousin works security. He said the system shows 17 minutes missing." Alejandro turned sharply. "What?" Elena stepped back, frightened by his voice. Sophia closed her eyes. 17 minutes. The space between a lie and a crime. Alejandro reached for his phone, but Sophia spoke before he could dial. "Do not pretend to investigate now because the truth finally threatens you." He froze. Outside the room, footsteps approached. Not hurried. Controlled. Familiar. A man in a dark coat appeared at the doorway, followed by 2 private security officers and a hospital administrator who suddenly looked nervous. Alejandro straightened. "Who are you?" The man did not answer him. He looked only at Sophia. His expression broke when he saw her face. "Sophia," he said softly. She turned toward the door. For the first time that night, her eyes filled with tears. "Mateo." Alejandro looked from one to the other. "You know him?" Mateo Herrera stepped into the room. "I am her brother," he said. Then his gaze moved to Alejandro, cold and steady. "And I am taking my sister home." Mateo did not raise his voice. He did not need to. The hospital administrator moved aside the moment he heard the Herrera name. The 2 private security officers stepped into the room and stood near Sophia's bed, not as a threat, but as a wall between her and everyone who had failed to protect her. Alejandro looked at Mateo with confusion first, then with recognition. Herrera was not a small name in Mexico City. It was printed on export permits, investment reports, charity foundations, and private port contracts. Men like Alejandro did not forget that name. They studied it. "You are Mateo Herrera?" Alejandro asked. Mateo ignored him and looked at Sofia. "Can you stand?" Sofia nodded, though her body felt hollow. A nurse helped her sit up. Mateo removed his coat and placed it around her shoulders. Only then did he turn back to Alejandro. "My sister will be transferred to a private medical wing. Her records will be sealed. Any further contact goes through our lawyers." Alejandro stared at him. "Your sister?" Sofia did not answer. She was too tired to explain a truth he had never wanted to know. Alejandro stepped closer, but one security officer shifted in front of him. "Sofia," Alejandro said, "tell him to wait. We need to talk." Mateo's jaw tightened. "You had a wife bleeding in your house. You chose another woman's story. The time for talking ended before I arrived." Alejandro's face hardened. "I am still her husband." Mateo looked at the hospital bracelet on Sofia's wrist. "Then you should have noticed she was your emergency contact before a server had to call an ambulance." The words landed cleanly. Alejandro had no answer. Sofia stood slowly. Pain moved through her, but she did not bend. At the doorway, she stopped and looked back at the man she had once chosen over her own blood. "I told you the truth," Sofia said. "You made it wait outside while you protected a lie." Then she left with her brother. The Herrera residence stood behind black iron gates on a hill above the city. It was not bright like the Rivas mansion. No music spilled from open doors. No guests laughed under chandeliers. The house was quiet, built from pale stone and dark wood, with old orange trees lining the drive. Sofia had not crossed that gate in 3 years. When the car stopped, she did not move. Mateo sat beside her in silence. Finally, Sofia whispered, "Does he hate me?" Mateo knew who she meant. "No," he said. "He has been angry. He has been proud. He has been impossible. But he has never hated you." The front door opened before they reached it. Don Esteban Herrera stood in the entrance hall, wearing a dark suit without a tie. His hair was silver now, more silver than Sofia remembered. In his hand was a small velvet box. For a moment, no one spoke. Sofia had prepared herself for blame. For a cold question. For the old argument about how she had thrown away her name for a man who did not deserve it. But Don Esteban only looked at her face, then at the hospital bracelet still around her wrist. His hand trembled. "My daughter," he said. Those 2 words broke what the doctor's apology had not. Sofia stepped forward, and her father met her halfway. He held her carefully, as if she were both a child and something already broken. Sofia buried her face in his shoulder and cried without sound. Don Esteban did not tell her to be strong. He only held her until her knees stopped shaking. Later, in the private sitting room, the house doctor checked her blood pressure. A nurse brought tea she did not drink. Mateo placed the medical envelope, the hospital bracelet, and Elena's blood-stained cloth on the table in separate clear sleeves. Each item was labeled, not because the Herreras were cold, because they knew evidence could be destroyed by grief if no one protected it in time. Don Esteban watched the sleeves in silence. Then he opened the velvet box. Inside lay an emerald bracelet set in old gold. Sofia recognized it instantly. It had belonged to her mother, Lucia Herrera. In the family charter, the bracelet was not only jewelry. It marked the confirmed heir of Herrera Group's founder shares. Sofia looked away. "I cannot wear that." "You can," Don Esteban said. "No, I left." "You left my house," he said. "Not your name." Sofia closed her eyes. "I chose Alejandro. And I let you," her father said. That made her look up. Don Esteban's face was lined with pain, but his voice stayed steady. "I knew about the Santa Lucia Trust." The room became very still. Sofia stared at him. "You knew?" "I knew the day the trustee called to confirm the bridge loan. I could have blocked it. I did not." "Why?" "Because it was your money to direct. Your mother created that trust for women who could see value where powerful men saw only risk. You used it exactly as she would have." Sofia's throat tightened. "He never knew." "I know. He let them call me a burden. I know that too." For the first time, anger entered Don Esteban's voice. Mateo stood near the window, his arms crossed. "Rivas Corporation is negotiating with Valleport Capital," he said. "Their preliminary file came through one of our analysts last week. The structure is aggressive." Sofia looked at him. "You saw it?" "Preferred shares. Missed benchmark conversion." hidden beneficial owners behind two shell entities. Raul Mendoza touched the file, Sophia said. Mateo's eyes narrowed. How do you know? Metadata. I saw his name in the document history. For the first time that night, Don Esteban did not look at her as an injured daughter. He looked at her as an heir. Then this is larger than the affair. Sophia nodded. Camila wanted me gone before the deal closed. If Alejandro signs, Rivas could lose control within 6 months. Maybe sooner, if the shipment targets are designed to fail. Mateo placed another folder on the table. Herrera Group's investment committee meets in 4 days. Rivas is on the candidate list. Sophia understood the choice before anyone said it. As Sophia Rivas, she could disappear, grieve, and let Alejandro's world collapse under its own arrogance. As Sophia Herrera, she could step back into the boardroom she had run from and expose the people using his blindness as a weapon. Don Esteban lifted the emerald bracelet. I am not asking you to save him, he said. I am asking whether you want the truth to have your name on it. Sophia looked at the hospital bracelet on the table, then at the emerald bracelet in her father's hand. One marked what she had lost. The other marked what she had refused to become. Slowly, Sophia held out her wrist. Her father fastened the emerald bracelet around it. The gold felt cold at first, then heavy, then real. Sophia looked at Mateo. Find out who turned off the camera. Then she looked at her father. And call the investment committee. I will attend the gala. Mateo studied her face. As Herrera's representative? Sophia touched the emerald bracelet. No, she said. As Sophia Herrera. The gala invitation arrived at Rivas Corporation in a black envelope with a silver Herrera seal. Alejandro held it for several seconds before opening it. Herrera Group did not invite everyone. Their winter investment gala was not only a party, it was a gate. Companies that entered that room could leave with capital, distribution access, port priority, and protection no bank could offer. A rejection could make lenders nervous by morning. Rivas Corporation needed that room. Valleport Capital was still circling the company with elegant language and hidden teeth. Alejandro's board wanted options. Isabel wanted prestige. Camila wanted to stand beside Alejandro beneath the cameras and look like the future. No one mentioned Sophia. Isabel called her that situation. Camila called her a private embarrassment. Alejandro said nothing, but when he looked at the empty chair Sophia used to take at breakfast, his hand tightened around his coffee cup. The gala took place 4 nights after Sophia left the hospital. The Herrera Cultural House stood in the old financial district, behind iron balconies and restored stone arches. Inside, the entrance hall smelled of lilies, polished wood, and expensive perfume. Every guest received a discreet folder at registration. Inside were 3 documents: an investor eligibility file, a beneficial ownership disclosure, and a conflict of interest declaration. Most guests glanced at them and moved on. Sophia had approved every page that afternoon. She stood upstairs in a private dressing room, wearing a long black dress with only the emerald bracelet on her wrist. Her face was calm, not cold, calm. Mateo watched from the doorway. You do not have to face them tonight. Sophia looked at her reflection. Yes, I do. You are still recovering. I know. Then let me speak for you. She turned to him. If I let every man who loves me speak in my place, I become silent again. Mateo accepted that. Downstairs, Alejandro entered with Isabel on one side and Camila on the other. Camila wore pale gold, chosen to look innocent under flashbulbs. Her hand rested near her stomach, as if every step reminded people of the accusation she had created. Several guests greeted Alejandro. A few looked past him, searching for the wife who had vanished after the birthday scandal. Isabel noticed. My son is here for business, she said smoothly. Not gossip. Camila lowered her eyes. The performance worked on people who wanted it to work. Then the seating director approached with a tablet. Mr. Rivas, your table is number 8. Isabel blinked. 8? At Herrera galas, seating was its own language. Table 1 was for founding families and sovereign funds. Table 2 was for strategic partners. Tables 3 and 4 were for companies already favored by the committee. Table 8 meant wait and prove yourself. Alejandro looked at the tablet. There must be a mistake. The seating director remained polite. No mistake, sir. Rivas Corporation remains under review. Isabel's face tightened. Camila touched Alejandro's arm. It is only a table, she whispered. But Sophia, watching from the balcony above, knew Camila understood. In rooms like this, A table was never only a table. The lights dimmed at 9 in the evening. Don Esteban Herrera stepped onto the main staircase. Conversation fell away. He welcomed the guests, thanked the board screening committee, and spoke briefly about responsibility. Then he paused. "This year," he said, "our investment review will be led by the person who best understands what hidden value means and what hidden risk costs." Alejandro looked toward the stage. Camila's fingers tightened around her glass. Don Esteban turned toward the upper landing. "My daughter, Sofia Herrera." For 3 seconds, the room forgot how to breathe. Sofia appeared at the top of the staircase. The black dress moved like shadow over the white stone. The emerald bracelet caught the chandelier light once, then again. Whispers began before she reached the first step. Alejandro stood, not politely, as if his body had moved without permission. Isabel's face lost color. Camila did not move. Her eyes locked on the bracelet. She knew what it meant. Everyone in that world knew. The emerald bracelet had belonged to Lucia Herrera. It was worn only when the holder of the founder shares was formally recognized inside the family. This was not a costume. This was authority. Sofia descended beside her father. She did not look at the Rivas table. Not yet. The master of ceremonies took the microphone. "Please welcome Sofia Herrera, representative of Heiress Strategic Investments and lead reviewer for this year's candidate companies." Applause rose, slow at first, then stronger because powerful rooms adjust quickly to truth they cannot deny. Alejandro still stood frozen. Isabel whispered, "Impossible." Camila recovered first. She leaned toward Alejandro. "She is using them," she said softly. "Maybe they took pity on her." Alejandro did not answer. For the first time, he was remembering too much. The bridge loan, the trust, the way Sofia had read terms he thought she could not understand. Sofia reached the stage. A staff member placed a slim folder on the podium. She looked across the room. Her gaze passed over investors, attorneys, bankers, and heirs. Only then did it settle on Alejandro. Not with love, not with hatred, with recognition, as if she were finally seeing the exact size of what he had failed to become. "Good evening," Sofia said. Her voice was steady. "This year, Heiress Strategic Investments will not judge companies by polish alone. We will review structure, disclosure, labor protection, and control risk. Any company with undisclosed beneficial owners, manipulated delivery benchmarks, or conflicts hidden behind private equity language will be suspended from consideration." A murmur passed through the hall. At table 8, Alejandro slowly sat down. Raul Mendoza was not in the room, but his shadow entered it. Sofia continued. "Every candidate company has received an investor eligibility file. By midnight tomorrow, each file must be returned with full ownership charts, officer declarations, and all prior advisory contacts related to pending capital deals." Camila's face became still, too still, Sofia noticed. So did Mateo from the side of the room. "Failure to disclose," Sofia said, "will not result in delay. It will result in removal." The words were professional. That made them more dangerous. Isabel leaned toward Alejandro. "This is aimed at us." Alejandro did not deny it. Because he had seen the Valleport summary, he had ignored Sofia's warning. Now the same warning stood on a stage under the Herrera seal. When the speech ended, applause returned. This time, it sounded careful. Guests began calculating what Sofia's position meant. People who had mocked her now avoided her eyes. After the presentation, Sofia stepped down from the stage. Alejandro moved toward her before Isabel could stop him. "Sofia." She turned. Up close, he looked thinner than 4 nights ago. "You are Herrera." She held his gaze. "I always was." He flinched. "Why did you never tell me?" Sofia looked past him to Camila, who stood near Isabel with one hand resting protectively against her stomach. "I tried to tell you something more important," Sofia said. "You chose not to hear it." Alejandro swallowed. "The bridge loan. Was it really you?" Sofia did not answer directly. Instead, she handed him a copy of the eligibility file. "Return this by midnight tomorrow." He looked down at it. "This is business to you now?" "No," Sofia said. "This is consequence." Isabel approached, anger wrapped in dignity. "You expect us to believe this is not personal?" Sofia turned to her. "I expect you to read the disclosure form." Camila stepped forward then, smiling with a faint tremble. "Sofia, whatever happened between us, You should not abuse your family's name to punish Alejandro. The sentence was perfect for nearby ears. Sophia answered just as softly. If your position is clean, Camila, the documents will protect you. Camila's smile faded by a fraction. Only a fraction, but enough. Sophia looked at her hand near her stomach, then at her eyes. For the first time, Camila looked away. Sophia walked past them without another word. Behind her, Alejandro opened the folder. On the first page, in clean black type, was the question that would decide the future of Rivas Corporation. List all individuals who have advised, arranged, benefited from, or held indirect interest in any pending capital conversion agreement. Alejandro read it twice. Then he saw the line below it. Failure to disclose prior advisory contact may trigger immediate review under the Santa Lucia Protective Clause. His hands went cold, because for the first time, Sofia Herrera had not come back to ask him to believe her. She had come back with a form that would force every liar in his company to write their own name. The attack did not begin with shouting. It began with whispers. After Sophia stepped away from the stage, the gala continued as if nothing had broken. Investors smiled carefully at people they had mocked only days before. Near the East Gallery, Isabel Rivas gathered 3 women around her. She is Don Esteban's daughter, one of them said. How did no one know? Isabel gave a small, bitter smile. Because powerful families hide their disappointments well. The women leaned closer. Sophia was never raised for this world, Isabel said. She disappeared for years. Don Esteban must be trying to repair a family embarrassment by giving her a title tonight. The words moved through the gallery with expensive perfume and soft laughter. Attack 1 had started. Not with facts. With status. By the dessert table, Camila performed the gentler version. She accepted sympathy from guests who still believed she had been harmed. One hand remained near her stomach. I do not want to speak badly of Sophia, she said. That sentence always meant the opposite. But I worry about her. Losing control in public, making accusations, appearing suddenly under a name she hid for years. It is all very concerning. A banker's wife touched Camila's arm. You are very kind to say that after what she did. Camila lowered her eyes. I only hope she gets help. Across the room, Sophia heard pieces of it. She did not turn around. Mateo saw her hand tighten around the folder. Do you want me to stop them? He asked. No, Sophia said. Let them choose their method. Why? Because people reveal their fear by the weapon they reach for first. On the far side of the hall, Alejandro stood with the investor eligibility file in his hands. He could hear his mother. He could see Camila receiving sympathy. But he could also see Sophia answering questions from 2 senior partners of an international bank. She looked prepared. That disturbed him more than her dress or her name. An hour later, the second attack arrived. A young financial journalist named Mariana Solis received an anonymous message on her phone. She was known for writing about corporate heirs, succession disputes, and scandals behind family companies. The message contained 3 scanned pages. The first was an old internal family memo from Herrera Group. The second was a private mental health referral after Lucia Herrera's death. The third was a partial legal note that said Sofia Herrera had stepped away from family duties due to emotional instability and refusal to comply with board expectations. Mariana read the pages twice. Then, she looked up at Sophia. Camila watched from behind a column. Sophia was with Herrera's board screening committee when Mariana approached. Miss Herrera, the journalist said. May I ask a question? Sophia turned. Of course. Mariana held up her phone. Did you leave Herrera Group because the board considered you unfit for leadership? The nearby conversation stopped. Mateo moved immediately, but Sophia lifted one hand. No, she said. Mariana hesitated. So these documents are false? Sophia looked at the screen. The pages were real. That was what made them dangerous. They are incomplete, Sophia said. Camila stepped forward at just the right moment. Incomplete? She repeated softly. Or uncomfortable? Guests turned. Isabel arrived beside Camila, her face full of wounded dignity. We did not want this brought into public, Isabel said. But perhaps the committee should know whether personal resentment is influencing tonight's review. Alejandro looked at his mother. What documents? Camila placed a hand on his arm. Alejandro, I did not want you to see this here. Then she showed him the scans. Sophia watched his eyes move across the words. Emotional instability. Refusal to comply. Removed from consideration. Each line was sharp because each line had been cut from its body. Alejandro looked up slowly. "You were removed from Herrera Group." "No," Sophia said. "Then why does it say that?" "Because someone removed the rest of the page." Camila's voice trembled with perfect concern. "Sophia, please, this is not another conspiracy. Everyone goes through difficult periods. After your mother died, maybe you were not well. There is no shame in that." The sentence was designed to sound compassionate, but it placed Sophia inside a cage. If she became angry, Camila could call her unstable. If she stayed silent, the accusation would harden. Sophia chose a third path. She turned to Herrera's legal director. "Valeria, please secure the source file request." Valeria nodded and opened her tablet. Sophia faced Mariana again. "You may report that a sealed family archive appears to have been accessed without authorization. You may also report that the document shown to you is missing its final section." Mariana blinked. "What final section?" "The part explaining why I stepped away." Isabel's expression tightened. Sophia continued. "My father wanted me to accept a board-approved marriage alliance after my mother died. I refused. The phrase refusal to comply does not refer to business duties. It refers to a marriage contract." A murmur moved through the room. Camila's smile thinned. Sophia looked at the phone again. "And the mental health referral was real. My mother had died. I was grieving. That was not instability. That was being human." The words were quiet. They reached farther because of that. For the first time that night, a few guests looked away from Camila. Not because they loved Sophia, because they recognized the ugliness of the weapon. Alejandro still held the phone. "Who sent this?" he asked Mariana. Mariana looked uncomfortable. "Anonymous number." Valeria stepped beside Sophia. "The scan has embedded metadata," she said. "It was exported today at 6:34 in the evening. The file name includes initials." Camila's eyes flickered. "Only once." But Sophia saw it. "What initials?" Mateo asked. Valeria checked the tablet. R.M. Archive Extract. Alejandro's head lifted. "Raul Mendoza?" Isabel frowned. "Raul has nothing to do with this." Sophia looked at her. "How do you know?" The question landed too quickly. Isabel had answered before thinking. For the first time, her certainty looked like knowledge. Camila stepped in. "This is ridiculous. Now Sophia is trying to blame a former executive because she cannot explain why her own family hid her history." Sophia turned to her. "My history was not hidden. It was sealed." "That sounds convenient." "So does pretending concern while leaking medical grief to a reporter." The room went silent. Camila's face flushed. Alejandro stared at Sophia. "You think Camila leaked this?" "I think whoever leaked it knew exactly which parts would hurt me and which parts to remove." Sophia looked at the journalist. "Mariana, if you want the story, write the whole one. Ask who accessed the archive. Ask why the final paragraph is missing. Ask why a former chief financial officer's initials appear on a Herrera family file. And ask why this attack began only after Rivas Corporation was asked to disclose all prior advisory contacts." The journalist lowered her phone. Now, she was no longer looking at scandal. She was looking at structure. Camila saw it too. Her hand tightened near her stomach. Across the room, Alejandro looked down at the eligibility file again. The question about advisory contacts seemed to grow darker on the page. Raul Mendoza. Valaport Capital. Camila's sudden fear. His mother's quick defense. For the first time, suspicion turned its face away from Sophia, but it did not yet become loyalty. Alejandro approached her after the crowd thinned. "Sophia," he said, "if Raul is involved, I need to know." Sophia looked at him. "No, you need to disclose. That could damage Rivas. Then maybe Rivas should have been more careful about who it trusted." His jaw tightened. "Do not punish the company because of me." Sophia's voice stayed even. "I am not punishing the company. I am asking it to tell the truth." He looked as if he wanted to argue. Then he saw the emerald bracelet on her wrist. As authority. Before he could speak again, Valeria returned. "We have a problem," she said. Sophia turned. The archive access did not come from outside Herrera. It came through a temporary legal credential issued to Rivas Corporation during the old Santa Lucia loan review. Alejandro went still. Sophia looked at him. The room seemed to narrow around them. Someone inside Rivas had used a key from the rescue she gave them to open the past she had buried. And whoever had done it had not only attacked her name, they had connected the birthday lie, the Valleport deal, and the old bridge loan into one trail. Alejandro waited until the gala ended. He did not approach Sofia in front of the press. Not while cameras were still watching the Herrera staircase. Not while bankers were whispering about Raul Mendoza's initials in the old Santa Lucia credential. He waited until the guests moved into the garden courtyard for coffee. Then he found her near a row of orange trees, speaking with Valeria, Herrera's legal director. Mateo stood a few steps away, close enough to hear, far enough to let Sofia choose. Alejandro stopped at the edge of the lantern light. Sofia. Valeria looked at Sofia first. Sofia nodded once. The lawyer closed her tablet and stepped away. Mateo did not move. Alejandro noticed. I only need 5 minutes. Mateo's voice was flat. You had 3 years. Sofia turned slightly. Mateo. Her brother looked at her, then walked toward the fountain. He did not go far. Alejandro stepped closer. For a moment, he did not look like the man who had stood beside Camila under the chandeliers. He looked tired, stripped down, less certain of the room around him. But Sofia had already learned that regret could wear the same face as fear. I need to understand what is happening, he said. No, Sofia answered. You need to disclose what is happening. His jaw tightened. If I submit that file exactly as written, Rivas Corporation will be exposed. It is already exposed. Not publicly. Sofia looked at him. That was the sentence. Not, was my company used for fraud? Not, did someone hurt you? Not, did Camila Lee? Only, not publicly. Alejandro heard his own words too late. Sofia, that is not what I mean. It is exactly what you mean. He took a breath. I have employees, warehouses, contracts. Families depend on that company. If Herrera suspends us now, lenders will panic. Valleport will move faster. The board will blame me. My mother will. Your mother will survive embarrassment, Sofia said. My child did not survive your silence. The words landed between them and stayed there. Alejandro's face went pale. He looked down. I did not know. You keep saying that as if not knowing happened to you. He swallowed. I was wrong. Sofia did not answer. The courtyard was quiet except for water moving in the fountain. Alejandro reached inside his jacket and removed another envelope. This one was not folded like divorce papers. It was thicker. Prepared by lawyers who understood reputation better than grief. Sofia looked at it. What is that? A proposal. Her eyes lifted to his. We can settle the personal matter separately from the corporate review. You can continue the Herrera process, but delay the disclosure deadline for Rivas. In return, I will sign whatever apology you want. Compensation, property transfer, a private acknowledgement of what happened at the hospital. Sofia stared at him. You brought me another paper. It is not like that. It is exactly like that. He held the envelope lower. I am trying to fix this. No, you are trying to manage it. Alejandro's voice sharpened. Do you want Rivas destroyed? I wanted you to tell the truth when it cost less. That is not an answer. Because that is not the real question. He looked at her. Sofia stepped closer, the emerald bracelet cold against her wrist. The real question is whether you want the truth, or only a version that leaves you comfortable. Alejandro looked toward the garden doors, where Isabel stood with Camila. Camila was watching them through the glass. Sofia followed his gaze. There, she said softly. That is your problem. You still look to see who is watching before you decide what is right. He turned back. You think I do not care? I think you cared when caring made you feel noble. You loved me when I sat beside you in that small apartment and told you to survive. But when the world started applauding you, I became proof of a time you wanted to forget. His eyes filled, but he did not look away. That is not fair. No, it is accurate. He breathed out. For a few seconds, the anger left him. Something more honest appeared beneath it. I suspected someone had helped us, he said. After the bridge loan. The terms were too generous. No voting rights, no pressure, no board seat. I asked my lawyer once if the trust had a hidden sponsor. Sofia became still. What did he say? He said some doors should stay closed if they keep a company alive. And you accepted that? I was ashamed, Alejandro said. I wanted to believe I had saved everything myself. There it was. Not a confession of love. A confession of pride. Sofia looked away, toward the orange trees. Their blossoms smelled like spring, which felt cruel. When I was your wife, she said, I gave you dignity by hiding my name. You repaid me by letting your family use that silence as proof I had none. Alejandro flinched. I cannot undo that. No. But I can help now. Sophia turned back. Then disclose. He closed his eyes. The answer hurt him before he spoke it. If I disclose Raoul before I know the full structure, he may destroy evidence. If I disclose Valaport's terms without board preparation, I may lose control before we can stop them. Sophia studied him. This was the first useful thing he had said. Not because it excused him, because it contained a real risk. What do you propose? 12 hours. No. Sophia, no delay. But you may submit a supplemental declaration before the deadline. Full advisory contacts. Full document history. Full communication with Raoul. If you hide one name, Herrera removes Rivas from consideration. His mouth tightened. And Camila? Sophia's voice did not change. If she is involved, her name goes in the file. Alejandro looked through the glass again. Camila gave him a small smile. For the first time, Sophia saw doubt cross his face before loyalty could cover it. I do not know if I can prove it. You do not need to prove her innocent. You need to stop protecting her from questions. He looked back at Sophia. And us? The words sounded strange now. Us. Sophia remembered the kitchen floor, the bridge loan, his head in his hands, her own hand on his shoulder. Then she remembered the hospital bed. There is no us in this negotiation. Sophia. You can cooperate with the review. You can tell the truth. You can preserve whatever is still honest inside your company. But do not confuse compliance with forgiveness. He stood silent. She handed him the eligibility file copy from her folder. The deadline remains midnight tomorrow. Alejandro took it. Their fingers did not touch. As Sophia turned to leave, he spoke again. Did you ever plan to tell me? She stopped. For a moment, the old answer rose inside her. Yes, when you were ready. Yes, when it would not wound your pride. Yes, when I believed love was stronger than names. But those answers belonged to a woman who had waited too long. Sophia looked back. I did tell you who I was, she said. Every time I stayed when it would have been easier to leave. You were the one waiting for a surname. Then she walked away. Behind the glass, Camila stepped toward Alejandro, ready to reclaim him with fear and softness. But Alejandro did not move toward her. He looked down at the file in his hand. For the first time, the paper seemed heavier than his pride. The headline appeared at 7:12 in the morning. By 7:20, it was everywhere. Heiress wife secretly funded husband's company before divorce battle. By 7:31, a second article followed. Did Sofia Herrera marry into Rivas Corporation to control it from inside? Sophia read the words from a tablet on the breakfast table at Herrera House. She had not slept much, but when she saw the wire transfer image under the headline, the tiredness left her eyes. Someone had leaked the Santa Lucia documents. Not all of them. Only the parts that could bleed. The article showed the bridge loan, the escrow account, and the date the funds entered Rivas Corporation. It omitted the clauses that mattered. No voting rights. No board seat. A compliance memo protecting jobs and shipments. Mateo stood beside the table. They are framing it as infiltration, he said. Sophia did not answer. On the screen, an anonymous source claimed Sophia had hidden her wealth and used a rescue loan to gain future leverage over her husband's company. The source said her role in the review was not oversight. It was revenge. Valeria entered with 2 phones and a folder. The story is being pushed by 3 accounts at once, she said. A business blog, a society column, and a crisis public relations firm. Who hired the firm? Mateo asked. They are hidden behind an agency. But the language matches Camila's statement from last night. Sophia kept looking at the transfer image. 2 years ago, she had signed those papers while Alejandro slept. She had feared that saving him secretly might hurt his pride. She had never imagined people would call it a trap. Don Esteban entered, read the article, and set the tablet down. They want you emotional, he said. I know. They want you to defend your marriage so they can call this personal. I know. What do you want to do? Sophia reached for Valeria's folder. Show the full audit trail. Inside were copies of every document connected to the Santa Lucia Bridge loan. The wire transfer timestamp, the escrow confirmation, the trustee signature, the beneficiary masking request, the non-voting rescue share agreement, the emergency compliance memo, the final page where Sophia had signed away any claim to board control. Her name was there. Her choice was there. The truth had always been there. People had only needed the missing pages to make it disappear. At Rivas Corporation, the article hit like a fire alarm. Alejandro entered the boardroom to find 5 directors already arguing. Isabel sat near the end of the table, pale with anger. Camila stood behind Alejandro's chair with one hand over her stomach, silent in a way that invited protection. One director slammed a printed article onto the table. "Did your wife buy her way into this company?" Alejandro looked at the transfer image. His chest tightened. He had seen references to Santa Lucia before, but not like this. Not beside Sofia's name. Not laid out as if the woman he had dismissed had been standing beneath it all along. Isabel spoke first. She lied from the beginning. Camila's voice was softer. "Alejandro, I am so sorry. Maybe this explains everything. Why she stayed quiet. Why she suddenly came back with Herrera power." Alejandro looked at her. For the first time, Camila's softness did not comfort him. It sounded prepared. The board chair leaned forward. "If the Herrera heir funded us secretly, her current role is a conflict. We can challenge it." Another director nodded. "We can accuse Herrera Group of predatory positioning." A week ago, Alejandro might have grabbed that argument like a shield. Now he saw the hole inside it. "If she wanted control," he said slowly, "why did she take no voting rights?" The room quieted. Camila's hand tightened on the back of his chair. "The loan terms," Alejandro said. "No voting demand, no board seat, no public pressure. The article does not mention that." Camila answered too quickly. Maybe that was the clever part. Alejandro turned to her. "The clever part was refusing control? If she wanted you to trust her later, yes." Alejandro heard Sofia's voice from the courtyard. "You still look to see who is watching before you decide what is right." He pushed the article away. "We submit the disclosure file." Isabel stood. "No." Alejandro did not look at her. "Full advisory contacts. Full document history. Every communication with Raul. Everything." Camila's face changed. Only for 1 second. But he saw it. At Herrera House, Sofia recorded a short statement. Not for gossip sites. For the investment committee. She stood in a plain gray room. Valeria placed the documents on a table as Sofia spoke. 2 years ago, the Santa Lucia Agricultural Trust issued an emergency bridge loan to Rivas Corporation. The purpose was to prevent default, preserve employment, and protect scheduled shipments tied to farming communities. She placed her hand on the non-voting agreement. "I signed away voting control. Then, on the trustee's signature, I accepted no board seat. Then on the compliance memo, I required operational transparency, not ownership." Her voice stayed steady. "At the time, I was Alejandro Rivas's wife. I made a personal choice not to reveal my family name. That choice may be questioned, but the document trail is not ambiguous. The loan did not give me control over Rivas Corporation. It prevented others from taking it during a crisis." Valeria stopped recording. Mateo watched Sofia carefully. "You do not have to send it yet." "Yes," Sofia said. "I do. To the committee only? For now." Don Esteban studied her from the doorway. "You are protecting him again." Sofia looked at the documents. "No. I am protecting the truth from being made ugly enough to look like a lie." The statement reached the committee at 10:05 in the morning. By noon, Herrera's internal auditors added a note to the Rivas file. Preliminary review confirms Santa Lucia funds were non-controlling emergency support. Public interpretation appears materially incomplete. The phrase "materially incomplete" was quiet. In law, quiet phrases could cut deeper than insults. Camila understood that by afternoon. She called Raul Mendoza from a restroom inside the Rivas building. "You said the leak would destroy her credibility." Raul's voice crackled through the phone. "It should have, unless she releases the full audit trail." She did. A pause. "Then we move faster." Camila looked in the mirror. Her makeup remained perfect, but her eyes had sharpened. "Alejandro is asking about the disclosure file. Delay him." "I tried." "Then make him afraid of Herrera. Men like him will protect pride before truth if you press the right bruise." Camila ended the call when someone entered the restroom. She smiled at the woman washing her hands. Then she looked down at her stomach. The lie there had carried her this far. But Sofia's documents had survived the first fire. So Camila needed a larger one. That evening, Alejandro received Sofia's committee statement through Valeria. He read it alone in his office. The non-voting agreement was on page 4. The signature was clear. Sofia Herrera. Below it was one sentence in the trustee's note. Benefactor has expressly declined any voting authority to avoid reputational harm to Rivas management. Alejandro read that sentence 3 times. To avoid reputational harm. Even while saving him, Sophia had protected his pride. He sat back in his chair, the city lights behind him turning the window black. For the first time, the rescue did not make him feel humiliated. It made him feel seen, and that was worse. Because the person who had seen his weakness most clearly had also been the person he left bleeding in a hospital room. His phone buzzed. A message from Camila. Do not trust her documents. Herrera lawyers can make anything look clean. Alejandro did not reply. Instead, he opened the disclosure file. On the advisory contact page, Raul Mendoza's name waited in an old email thread like a buried bone. The good deed had been turned into a weapon, but the weapon had pointed backward. If Sophia had refused control, someone else had wanted it. Alejandro finally understood that the woman he called dangerous might have been the last person standing between his company and a theft he had invited inside. By the next morning, Camila stopped hiding behind whispers. At 8:06 in the morning, 5 media outlets sent Herrera Group the same question. Was Sofia Herrera abusing her power to punish her husband's pregnant lover? At 8:19, the video appeared online. It was only 3 seconds long. Sofia's hand moved. Camila gasped. Then she fell. There was no sound before the fall, no wide angle, no view of Camila reaching for Sofia first. Only a cropped image that made Sofia look guilty. By 8:40, the headline was everywhere. Did Sofia Herrera attack a pregnant woman? Sofia watched the clip once in Herrera house. Then, she turned the tablet face down. Valeria, the legal director, stood beside her. The file is compressed, Valeria said. Original metadata is stripped. Mateo looked furious. Can we get the full hallway footage? Not yet, Valeria said. Camera S3 went offline that night. Sofia looked up. For how long? 17 minutes. The number did not surprise her anymore. It confirmed the shape of the trap. At 10:30 in the morning, Herrera Group called an emergency committee review. The room was small, white, and cold. Only screens, files, and people deciding whether Sofia should be suspended from the Rivas review. Camila sat beside Alejandro, pale and fragile, with one hand near her stomach. Raul Mendoza appeared by video call. He wore a dark suit and a careful expression. I did not want to speak, he said. But Herrera Group cannot allow a conflicted heiress to threaten a vulnerable pregnant woman and destabilize Rivas Corporation. Then, Camila's lawyer introduced a medical consultant, Dr. Luis Ortega. Sofia noticed the title immediately. Consultant. Not attending physician. Dr. Ortega opened a file. Based on the records provided, Miss Duarte suffered acute distress after a physical confrontation. The pregnancy was placed under significant risk. Sofia looked at the report on the screen. One line was wrong, then another. She waited until he finished. Dr. Ortega, Sofia said. Did you examine Miss Duarte on the night of the incident? No, he said. I reviewed her records. Were those records sent directly from the hospital? The doctor paused. They were provided through counsel. Sofia turned to the committee. Then I request chain of custody for every medical document submitted today. Raul interrupted. This is a distraction. No, Sofia said. It is the difference between evidence and theater. Valeria connected her tablet to the screen. First came the emergency call transcript. Call 1. 10:29 in the evening. Patient, Camila Duarte. Call 2. 10:43 in the evening. Patient, Sofia Rivas. Heavy bleeding near the service corridor. Then came the hospital bracelet records. Camila Duarte, private maternity wing. Bracelet scanned at 10:54 in the evening. Sofia Rivas. Emergency intake. Bracelet scanned at 11:02 at night. The room became quiet. Sofia spoke clearly. Camila was taken first. I was left in the mansion for 14 minutes after the first emergency call. Alejandro closed his eyes. Camila whispered, Sofia, please do not use your loss like this. Sofia looked at her. I am not using grief. I am using time. Valeria opened the security log. Camera S3. Service corridor. Offline from 10:21 in the evening to 10:38 in the evening. Authorized by internal access key. The next line appeared. Access key originally issued to Raul Mendoza during the Santa Lucia loan review. Alejandro stood. Raul? Raul's face hardened on the screen. That is fabricated. Sophia shook her head. Not fabricated. Incomplete. And that is what your side keeps relying on. Then she pointed to Dr. Ortega's report. The header is wrong. The hospital uses a 2-line emergency maternity format. This document uses a 3-line outpatient billing format. Dr. Ortega looked down. Sophia continued. And the prenatal lab panel cited in this report was supposedly from an earlier appointment, but the file properties show it was created last night at 11:46 at night. Valeria enlarged the metadata. Created. 11:46 at night. Modified. 11:52 at night. Author. R. Mendoza. Legal packet. Raul's video call disconnected. His square on the screen went black. No one spoke. Then, every phone in the room began vibrating. A new headline had gone live. Sofia Herrera, under investigation by own family committee. Camila had released the story before the meeting ended. The committee chair looked shaken. This is now public. Sofia gathered the documents. Good. Alejandra stared at her. Good? She looked at the black screen where Raul had been. If they want a public story, we will give them the complete one. Camila stood too quickly. You cannot release private medical information. Sofia met her eyes. I will release my records, the call transcript, the camera log, and ask the hospital to verify whether your report came from its system. For the first time, Camila's face lost its softness. Sofia turned to the committee. Tonight's investment ceremony should continue. Invite the press. Invite every candidate company. Put the evidence on the main screen. Don Esteban stood at the back of the room. Sofia, he said. She looked at her father. He did not stop her. He only asked, Are you sure? Sofia looked at Alejandro, at Camila, then at the bracelet scan time that marked her loss. Yes, she said. For days, they have shown pieces of the truth. Tonight, they will stand in front of the whole thing. As the room emptied, Alejandro approached her. I did not know about Raul's key. Sofia's voice stayed calm. You keep meeting the truth after it has already hurt someone. He had no answer. She walked past him with Mateo and Valeria beside her. Behind them, Camila gripped the edge of the table. Her third attack had landed, but it had also opened the door she feared most. A video could be cropped. A document could be forged. A woman could be called unstable. But timestamps did not learn how to lie. The Herrera investment ceremony began at 7 in the evening. This time, the press stayed inside. Sofia had asked for every camera to remain on. The hall was full. Candidate companies sat with legal teams. Alejandro entered without Camila on his arm. She came behind him, dressed in white, pale but composed. Raul Mendoza was absent. That absence spoke before Sofia did. Don Esteban opened the ceremony with one sentence. Tonight, Herrera Group will not defend reputation. We will examine records. Then Sofia stepped onto the stage. On the screen behind her appeared the cropped hallway video. Gasps moved through the room. Sofia let it play once. Then she said, This is what the public was shown. The screen changed. Emergency call transcript. Call 1. 10:29. In the evening, Camila Duarte. Call 2. 10:43 in the evening, Sofia Rivas. Heavy bleeding near the service corridor. A hush fell. The next screen showed hospital bracelet scan times. Camila Duarte. 10:54 in the evening, Sofia Rivas. 11:02 at night. Sofia looked across the hall. I was not attacking a pregnant woman. I was being left behind while losing my own child. Alejandro lowered his head. Camila stood frozen. Sofia continued. This does not prove who lied. It proves who was ignored. Valeria stepped forward and displayed the security log. Camera S3. Offline from 10:21 in the evening to 10:38 in the evening. Authorized by an internal access key issued to Raul Mendoza during the Santa Lucia loan review. Alejandro looked toward the Rivas table. No one there spoke. Then came Dr. Ortega's report. Sofia did not raise her voice. The consultant who accused me did not examine Miss Duarte that night. His report was provided through counsel. Its format does not match the hospital's emergency maternity file. Its lab panel was created at 11:46 at night the night before this hearing. The metadata appeared. Author, R. Mendoza, legal packet. Several reporters lifted their phones. Camila took one step back. Sophia turned to her. "Do you still want to say this is grief speaking?" Camila's mouth opened. No answer came. The final file appeared. A prenatal record from a private clinic appeared, obtained after Dr. Ortega's submission triggered fraud review. Sophia looked at Alejandro only once. The record shows Miss Duarte's pregnancy began before the dates she gave Mr. Rivas. The hall erupted. Alejandro turned to Camila. "Is it mine?" Camila's face cracked. "Alejandro, please. Is it mine?" She looked toward the exit. Two security officers moved into place. Valeria displayed the last audio file. Camila's voice filled the hall, low and sharp. "If Sophia's baby disappears, Alejandro will have no reason to go back. And once Rivas signs Valleport, Raúl gets control through the conversion trigger." Isabel covered her mouth. Alejandro looked as if the floor had vanished. Sophia let the silence stretch. Then she placed the Santa Lucia agreement on the screen. Non-voting rescue shares. No board seat. No control rights. "I did not save Rivas Corporation to own it," Sophia said. "I saved it because I loved a man who had lost everything. The people beside him tried to turn that love into a weapon." Police entered. Camila tried to move, but Mateo blocked her path. Raúl's warrant appeared beside the forensic accounting report. His access key, Valleport shell entities, and forged medical packet formed one timeline. The committee chair stood. "Rivas Corporation is removed from automatic approval and placed under independent restructuring review. Herrera Group will continue only under full disclosure." Then Don Esteban faced the hall. "Sofia Herrera will lead that review." This time, the applause did not come quickly. It came after people understood what it meant. Sofia had not returned to be believed. She had returned with evidence strong enough that disbelief no longer mattered. 3 days later, Sofia stood inside the Herrera boardroom, no longer behind her father, and no longer beside a man who needed her silence. Don Esteban placed the restructuring file in front of her. "By board vote," he said, "Sofia Herrera will lead Herrera Strategic Investments." No one clapped too quickly. Rivas Corporation would survive, but not as Alejandro's private kingdom. It would enter independent restructuring. Every hidden owner and false report would be reviewed. Alejandro waited outside the building. He held the wedding ring she had left behind. "I know I do not deserve another chance," he said, "but I loved you." Sofia looked at the ring. "No," she said gently. "You loved the woman who made your weakness disappear. You never learned to love the woman who had a name of her own." She placed the ring in his palm and closed his fingers around it. "This belongs to the life I survived." Then she walked away. Months later, a small clinic opened in the farming town where Sofia's mother had once funded school lunches and medicine. Above the entrance was a bronze plaque, the Lucia and Esperanza Foundation. Esperanza was the name Sofia had given the child she never held. Inside Sofia's new office, behind glass, hung the simple cream dress Isabel had mocked at the birthday party. Visitors often mistook it for a symbol of poverty. Sofia knew better. It was proof that dignity could stand in an old dress, be laughed at by powerful people, and still return with the truth. On opening day, Sofia stood outside the ultrasound room of the new clinic. This time, no one left her waiting. She turned toward the sunlight, wearing the emerald bracelet and her own name. Sofia Herrera,